So the thing is, most times when we don't make it past through an interview, a lot of thoughts comes to our mind like, what did I not get right? What did I not say right? Or I should have said this, or I should have said that, or I should have elaborated more on this and that. Like the thoughts are endless, and it's perfectly normal. Okay, I mean it can be quite devastating to have to go through the process of application, job application, and when you're being asked for an interview, you go for an interview and at the end of the day you don't get selected for that job. It can be quite unsettling. Okay, but that's fine. I mean, failure is part of life, isn't it? But in today's video, I'm going to discuss with you the tips and the tricks that I've learned over time that has helped me, or that helped me land my first ever healthcare interview job here in the UK. And yes, it's tried and it's proven. Okay, so if you incorporate these tips and tricks into your next healthcare interview questions, there's every likelihood that it will be a success. So if you want to hear it, stick around in this video so that we can talk about them. Okay? Hi, my name is Chinaza, and as always, I am happy you're here. Thank you so much for coming. Thank you so much for stopping by. Now, the first tip and trick, or should I say the first tip that you need to know if you have an interview coming that you need to do, or if you have an interview coming up, the first tip that you need to know, don't you ever forget this one, is read the job description. Is read your job description. Okay. Now, for every job that is being advertised, there's a job description for that job. In most cases, there's always the job description. Now, job description tells you what the job is about, your likely roles and responsibilities on a weekly or in a daily basis. Okay, what you're what you're most likely, to do in that job, or what they are looking for in a successful candidate to do in that job. You would always find a job description in every job advert that you see, or in most cases, in a high percentage of job vacancies or job advertisements that you see, there will always be a job description. But now, the mistake that a lot of people do is that they don't even read it at all. Like you have an interview, you're going for an interview, and you don't even know your job description. All you know is that you've applied and you're qualified and stuff like that, but you don't really know the job description. So when you go into the interview and you'll be asked, so what are going to be your roles in this job? You're like you're kind of lost, or you say something that is not exactly what they would want to hear, you're actually shooting yourself in the leg. So it's very important to take your time, sit down, relax, have a look at your job description, read all your job descriptions so that you can have an idea of what your roles and your responsibilities are in that job. And secondly, if you're asked a question based on the job description in that job, you wouldn't be caught unawares. Okay? That's the first tip. Very, very important. Now, to the second tip. Now, the second tip that you need to know, before your next healthcare interview questions is always ask the interviewer or the recruiter to repeat their questions if you don't understand what they asked you. Yes, that's very, very right to do that. That's very, very normal. Most times during interviews, we are so tense, we're so anxious, so nervous, like there's a lot of feelings going on. We're so unsettled, right? And sometimes when we're being asked some questions that we don't properly understand or we don't really grasp, what the question is all about, we'll feel quite uncomfortable to ask our interviewer to repeat themselves because we feel that I don't think that's right, that kind of feeling. But you're actually reducing your chances of getting that job. Most times, out of fear or out of anxiousness, a lot of people just answer the opposite of what they've been asked. Like you're asked a question A and you're answering something entirely different, like something that has no correlation to what you're being asked. Okay, so it's as good as you failed that question. Okay, so if you're being asked a question during your interview and you do not understand it or you don't quite grasp what the question is all about, don't take chances. Do not take chances. Just politely ask the interviewer, please, can you rephrase your question? Or please, I didn't quite get your last question. Do you mean then you repeat what you felt that you heard or you felt that you understood to the recruiter or to the interviewer? Okay. When you do that, it's now left for the interviewer to rephrase that question and ask you if you now understood it the second time or ask it in such a way that you'll understand. It's very, very important to ask the interviewer or the recruiter to repeat their questions or to rephrase their questions. Make sure you always understand a question that is being asked to you before you attempt to answer it. It's very, very, very important. All right. Okay. So now let's get over to our tip number three. Okay. And that is always have questions to ask your interviewer or your recruiter at the end of the interview. Okay. Now, in as much as this is an interview, I always like to call it a discussion. Okay. It's like a time where somebody wants to get to know you, somebody that wants to hire you, wants to get to know you, wants to get to know the kind of person you are, just a little bit, just a little bit of your personality and stuff like that. Okay. So it's not like a moment where you're so, I know you could be nervous. That's very normal. That's very natural. I mean, a lot of us are nervous during interviews. Okay. But do not let it get the best of you. Now, the best way not to be caught unawares or the best way not to be helpless at the end of your interviews is have a couple of questions written down. Okay? Because if you've read your job descriptions for that job, ab initio, it will even help you to understand what the job is all about. And if there's any questions that you have, this is the right time to write it down and maybe have it at the back of your mind, knowing that you're going to ask the recruiter that question at the end of the interview. Okay? Now, at the end of the interview, the recruiter will be like, do you have any questions for us or any questions for us? That's the exact time you need to ask those questions. Be fine. I mean, they've been asking you questions, right? So it's not a bad thing if you ask them questions. Okay. It also shows that you're interested in the job. It also shows that you read about the job and you just want to be a part of this job or a part of this organization. So it could be two questions, it could be three questions, but let them be really meaningful and sensible questions. Don't go asking them questions like when is the next when how many annual leave holidays do you guys give people that are successful at this job? Or ask them questions like, you know, just ask really meaningful questions that would give you a very high chance of getting a job. Okay. So always have two questions or three questions written down. Have it at the back of your head. When they say, do you have any questions for us? You'll be like, yeah, I have questions. So why, just try to have questions to ask. It's good. It's going to increase your chances of getting a job. All right. Now let's go to the next tip, the next trick that you need to have at the back of your mind when you're preparing for your next interview, your next healthcare interview, or any interview for that matter, to be honest. And that is read up the company's values. Okay, every company has values that that guide them. I think every company does that, or every industry does that. They have things, they have principles, they have a way of doing things, they have something that they believe in. So you should always read about that company that you're applying for, or that organization, healthcare organization that you're applying for. Okay, read about their values, have it at the back of your mind, understand their values. Okay, because during an interview, they might ask you, so what are the values of our company, or what are the values of our trust? And then you go looking like values, and they'll be like, yeah, values. And then at that moment, you don't even know what to say. Like you're gonna be stuck. Okay, so it's just more about reading about the company, like having it in the back of your head. They might just ask you, so what do you think about our values? I mean, you wouldn't even know how to answer that question if you don't even know their values at all. Talk more about what you think about them. Okay, so read the values of your company, of the organization that you're applying for. So if you're asked a question that is related to those values, you can be able to say a thing or two about it and increase your chances of getting the job. Okay, now the next tip or the next trick that you need to know during your next healthcare interview question is do not answer a question you do not know the answer to. Don't even bother. I mean, to be honest, that's what I think. Don't answer the questions that you don't know the answer to. So, assuming they asked you, why do you want to be a healthcare assistant? And you don't even know the answer to, I mean, you should know the answer to that, but let's say they asked you, why do you want to be a healthcare assistant? And you go saying something like, um, I like to dance, I like to cook, I like to read, I like to sleep, you know, The funny thing about most healthcare, or let me say, the funny thing about most interviewers or most recruiters is that even if you're talking out of point, they'll still be nodding their head like, okay, they'll still be giving you that nod. And then I don't know why, but it kind of makes you feel like you're making sense when you're not even making sense at all. Saying something that's not even it's not even adding up. But they just keep nodding their head, and in your mind, you're like, "Oh, I'm saying this correctly." And at the end of the day, like you actually said nothing. Okay. So when you're being asked a question you do not know, politely tell them that I have a very limited knowledge of this questions or this area, or I could read up on it and get back to you if that's fine, or I could give you an answer at the end of this interview, or maybe even if you're thinking about the question, maybe you feel like you have an idea about it, but you're not really sure. You'd be like, sorry, can I get back to this question at the end of this interview? Is that all right? You could ask that, or you could be like, can I get back to you? Can I tell you the answer, or can I get back to you regarding this question at the end of my interview? Can I send you a mail, to tell you, the answer, what I think about the answer to the question that you just asked me? I think it makes them feel kind of like, okay, this person does not know it, but she wants to know it, like she's interested in knowing it. I mean, it could be a good thing, okay? But do not go answering questions you don't even know the idea, like you don't even know it at all, like you don't even have any slightest clue, but you just want to talk, you just want to say something. You mustn't say something. If you don't know it, politely tell them that you're not really sure about this question, you don't know it. Can you get back to them after the interview with an answer to that question in a mail, or can you get back to the question at the end of the interview, depending on how you feel that question goes. If you don't know it at all, it's better to ask them, please, can I get back to you at the end of this interview via mail, the answer to this question that you asked me. I think it's better than that way than just saying things that doesn't even make sense. Okay. So yeah, so these are the tips and the tricks that if you incorporate them into your next interview questions, have it at the back of your mind. There is every possibility or every chance that you get that job. Like it's very, very, very possible that you get that job. When you get all those things in place, be aware of all those tips and all those tricks that most times you might not even like think about. But when you think about them and help use them to prepare for your next interview, you will not be caught unawares. And your chances of getting that next healthcare interview job or that next healthcare job will be very, very high. I hope this makes sense to you. I hope you enjoyed it. I think I did. If you did, kindly comment on the comment section, subscribe to this channel, and like this video if you liked it. Until my next video, thank you so much for staying with me for this long. I hope it was worth your while, and I'll see you in my next video.